Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about a Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon. There's the whole idea that if you're able to tell a story without any dialogue, it's considered like pure cinema. And I don't know if there really is something that is pure cinema or not, but it definitely is a different experience. It's obviously a lot more like silent film. This is not a silent film. There's some dialogue and sound effects in it, so theoretically it wouldn't be, but that kind of storytelling is very unique to visual mediums. You could say comic books, photography, what have you, but when it's experienced in a film, it feels very kind of pure in that sense. It feels like something only a movie could really do in the way they tell it. And the first Shaun the Sheep movie did that incredibly well. In fact, I really liked that about it. It reminded me of a film that came out the same year, Mad Max Fury Road, in terms of telling all of its story visually without any dialogue. Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon, does that as well. It kind of continues that tradition, and that's certainly what's so lovely about it. Animation started coming from vaudeville, which also influenced silent film, and silent film also influenced, Warner Brothers cartoons and Mickey Mouse and all that stuff. And in a lot of ways, the Shaun the Sheep cartoons feel very natural in that tradition and wonderful in that tradition, at a time when very few movies and TV are really trying to do that. It seems like animation tries a little bit more. But Shaun the Sheep is magnificent in that. And as much as I like the original, it's fairly underseen, although I constantly hear about how it's really good for little kids to watch the original one. Mostly because it is visual storytelling. They don't have like characters saying like, oh, we better go on the spaceship. They just kind of show it. And it is kind of a smarter, more internal sense of storytelling, and you don't have to be told as much what's going on. When I saw the first Shaun the Sheep movie, I didn't have a daughter, but now I do, and I showed her the first one, and she wasn't as into that. She liked it okay, but when I showed her the second one, she really loved it, and she's watched it a couple of times, requested to watch it. I think what is different about this, and is why probably she likes it more, is this is far more poppier. This is the first Aardman sequel. IMDb says it is the last animated sequel of the 2010s, but also say it's the first G-rated movie of the 2020s, so figure that one out. Mostly because of the alien subplot, which is more fun, is very easy references. It's referencing Close Encounters, E.T., The X-Files, Doctor Who. Very kind of obvious kind of references, but it works in kind of its fun, jokey sense to it. I think there's even references to the Jetsons, to RoboCop, to all these very obvious sci-fi things. You don't really have to go deep into the cinephile vault to figure out any of this stuff. But I think the difference between this and the original Shaun the Sheep movie is that film is about the sheep going to the city. It's very kind of an English countryside movie. In this, it's sort of more the sensibility of what a usual modern big animated film is. And this is sort of an interesting compromise. Now, I know this is the feature directorial debut of the two directors, Will Betcher and Richard Phelan, I think. And I know Aardman's changed a lot as a company since the first Shaun the Sheep movie to now, but I think this is a lot more poppier, and I think reminds me more of The Usual Thing, where the stakes are really high and there's all this universe stuff and all these things. I also think it helps because if you watch a film with a little kid and a little kid is trying to get home to their mommy and daddy, that's something little kids very much appeals to them, because that's something they understand. And as a kid, I will say I preferred sequels because they're a little more fun. They're a little more easy to go down than the seriousness and the world building. I never liked that as much as a kid. I always liked the quickness of sequels like Short Circuit 2 and Conan the Destroyer were two I watched a lot as a kid, but now I'm I don't think I've seen any in a long time. I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment to compare this film to those two. This kind of has that in the way it is poppier, it's more fun, but at the same time as being kind of an easier, more digestible film. Not that the first one wasn't, but this film manages to do that. It's also a very cinephile friendly movie. I don't see that a lot in family films. They try to do the lowest common denominator. They're not as interested in the possibilities of animation. They're more interested in the possibilities of keeping your kid entertained. And that's pretty much all they're doing. I mean, that's artistic intent wise. I get that's what they plan to do. But Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon does so much and succeeds at it. It's sort of like a miracle of an animated film. And I love Aardman, and I think stop motion is in sort of an interesting place right now, considering that most of them are going to have to go to streaming services, because when I saw the first one, 3 people were in the theater. When I saw Missing Link, I think the exact not the exact same people, but it was like under 5 people in the theater, and I had to turn the lights out in the theater because no one like gave a shit, because like stop motion is not bringing in the crowds. And even though stop motion features being a regular occurrence is kind of something that really happened in the 2000s, having, you know, several a year, it was very rare, never really happened. I think they're all going to have to go to streaming services. But I hope that this film, being such a much more like digestible film, I know people are more willing to check out any sort of movie if it's on a streaming service, because it's far less work to do that. And I hope they do, because I found this a really rewarding experience. I love like kind of checking out the various like visual gags. I haven't really talked about the plot, but it's basically about an alien who crash lands on Earth, an alien kid who steals a spaceship and crash lands on Earth, and Shaun the Sheep has to help them get back. And it does all the kind of usual things. There's a dog who's kind of the caretaker of the sheep, who's trying to stop them from doing various things. There's a woman, a CIA agent, or we're not even sure, she's just from the government, who's trying to track them, who has a backstory. It's very like normal kind of blockbuster stuff. And I think if they had a celebrity voice for the CIA agent and all this stuff, it would be a totally different kind of feel. But the way they do it in their Aardman way makes it kind of magical and amazing. And the only dialogue is the alien going zoom zoom, and that's it. And it doesn't really spoil the movie. That I was almost like, if they have somebody talking in this movie, I'm going to be really pissed off. But they don't. It's the pure cinematic experience of animation and silent film, and there's even sort of a modern times reference, I guess, in this, and it appeals to that kind of pureness of just being able to tell a story without using dialogue, purely using visuals. And stop motion, you're working on those visuals so long, think about how hard they worked to get just that simple communication through. And I love that about Aardman, and I love that about the Shaun the Sheep franchise. And I know it's not as big over here. That series never really was a hit like it was in England, but I don't want Aardman to die and become this lesser studio. And I think this shows that they could appeal to a larger audience. I don't know if kids would check this out in theaters, and maybe that's a better choice, because I really think this is a really magical kind of film. And it shows, honestly, like, I think if DreamWorks or any other studio had this story, it wouldn't be as much of an interesting film. And it probably shows through how they're able to tell this kind of normal story that, like, you know, Home basically did in some ways, how good Aardman is at being storytellers. They're probably, in terms of animation and storytelling, one of the top tier studios right now, or we're just maybe not appreciating them as much as we should. But this film, you know, it's wonderful having, you know, getting to watch this several times a week is actually really cool. I really like Farmageddon, and I like that it's a film that can appeal to the whole family, both on an intelligent way but also on a fun way. And there's not a lot of animated films that even attempt to do that. And Aardman's like reaching for the sky, and they have a lot of funny jokes. Like, the reason it's called Farmageddon is the farmer realizes this whole UFO craze in his town. He decides to make an amusement park. He does, and he has, like, it's the worst amusement park ever. There's even a thing that says "look at the moon" and an arrow pointing up. It's so silly, like Martian pigs, so silly, kind of dumb humor in a lot of ways, but it's just so wonderful. I really like Aardman. I've always liked Aardman from Wallace and Gromit and so forth. They're just so ingenious visually, and this just shows what's so great about that studio. And I think it probably shows it almost more than the others, because you could probably compare this plot to a lot of other animation studios, and you can almost show like how much better they are at doing it than almost anyone else. Because anyone else who's doing this, it's one of those animated movies that comes out and you totally forget about because it made absolutely no impression on you, and they make some fart jokes and like somebody does a dance, or I'm basically just talking about Home right now, but whatever. But this, such a good movie, such a wonderful animated film, and I absolutely love Shaun the Sheep as a franchise, and I really need to check out the series a lot more than I have. Maybe I will do that, but I think Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon is probably one of the best animated films I've seen, even of last year. But it's definitely something in animation we should take more seriously and appreciate a lot more than we currently are, because the storytelling and the animation quality and just the animation and like how the shots are composed and everything are some of the best in filmmaking today. And regardless of what the kind of story they're telling, and having like this cute little alien kid going, you know, trying to find his way home, this is one of the best at doing that, and probably something we should appreciate a lot more, that we really have it. And there's not a lot of stop motion films, and I think just for that, really, you could hail this film and say check it out just for that. But in terms of just an entertaining film experience, I would say Farmageddon is one of the better family animated films to come out in a long time. So if you have seen Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon and you would like to talk about it, then comment below. in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.